Hey, I think that we are live. Hello,
Yay!
everyone. Francisco here, next to Ed Giansante. Exciting times. Benvindo.
Muchas gracias.
This is amazing. So I'm really excited. We have been chatting with Ed for, I would say, years now. But finally, I got him for a talk at Led by Community. So, yeah, welcome to Led by Community, Talks and Pros. How is everything? How is everything, Ed? Tell me.
Things are great, man. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Great to see Led by growing insanely. Like you do amazing work. I think that's true community work. That people can follow.
I think that people love community. It's just that, and people love to learn from professionals like you. Probably that is like what is pushing us to bring people together. I think that is that desire to keep moving forward, to advance also your career or careers. I think that is the driver for all this. Really, it's the people. No.
Yeah,
Today we have
yeah.
a nice topic to share with everyone. No, of course I have to do a bit of housekeeping, but after that you can show us, what you have prepared for us. First, as I said, welcome everyone. Today this is the second talk of this series. Just so you know, we have scheduled talks till December 2025 already. Like when I started to ask on LinkedIn a few months back, hey, we are going to invite the best top professionals out there. The demand was boom, and the slots went so fast. Even one guy, this Christopher Detzel,
Yes.
he booked one of the latest calls and says, hey, I just booked for a year more my talk on Talks and
Wow.
Pros. He was a bit like, it was a bit funny, but yeah, so we are really doing this to deliver the best possible experience to all of you, to bring the best talent. So yeah, I'm just doing this with my heart. And of course, we have the upcoming events are also being hosted by our volunteers. We have Nicola, we have Akash, and many others that are going to be also helping with the hosting. So I'm excited. Now, today we have Ed. He is currently head of community at Persona. He has written a few books, a visual storyteller, and ex-community head for Dropbox, Wix, Singa, and also it's not in the description, but also VMware. No, we know
Yes.
that. And then uh, I need to give a shout to my friends at Bettermode, Mo, and the rest of the team, my former colleagues. They have been pushing and giving us a hand sponsoring this event. So, of course, if you want to learn more, just below the streaming, you have two blogs. You can explore the Bettermode templates for communities. And if you are looking for an enterprise solution, you need to click the other blog that will send you straight to the enterprise page, and you can learn more about that. So thank you, Bettermode, for that. And now let's dive in. First, I want to show this one because it's important for me. I want to see. Oh, Christopher Detzel was actually in the chat. Look. Oh, wow,
Chris
that's
never
funny.
stops. He never sleeps. It's like 8 a.m. when he's online. Amazing.
Yeah. So show me your mood today with an emoji, please, before we start the talk. Show me. Wow, Chris, that's great. That's great. Okay. Of course, we are going live in our own website, but then we are also live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, everywhere. So whatever is easier for you to connect and engage with us today, let's do it. Okay. Then what we want is to remind you that after Ed's part, we are going to have a round of questions. So whatever you have in your head regarding this topic or others that you think Ed can help with, feel free to share them in the chat so I can highlight them on screen, showing your name so we can get these questions sorted. All right. Okay. Let me bring this to stage then, because Ed, it's time. Go for it.
Perfect. Thank you, man. Thanks so much again for the time. And it's great to see people sending emojis here. Like I see some people like they might be on holidays because there's a coconut thing. I don't know. There's association of coconut and holidays. My mood
Yeah.
is like coffee because it's 8 a.m. Awesome, everyone. Thanks for being here. Really good to see familiar faces and names. Um, Today, I'm going to talk about the community as a service terminology. But just before I get into that, because when I shared this, people were like, "Oh, I've been doing community as a service for like 10 years." And then I looked it up, and it wasn't what I was thinking, because I think some people are making this outsourcing of community managers. the term community as a service. I don't think it's the same thing. So I'll share what my perspective is for community as a service, which is very different from being an outsourcer or for being a consultant, offering the services on behalf and still building the community work. It's slightly different. I'm going to explain this to you in a bit. But I have a couple of things to drill down with y'all. So one is a couple of the frameworks that you probably have seen, what the CaaS or the community as a service framework looks like, why, how, and then who. So let's start with the basics, right? You probably have seen frameworks everywhere. Do you see any of this that you're familiar with, or have you used any of these frameworks in the past? I have like friends who might be here, and sorry, I'm not using this as a bad example. I actually used a lot of them for several years. They're like fantastic. They helped me a lot with a lot of the work. But I feel that there are different ways of approaching community, especially now, 2024, 2025, that have been working than what I've been trying to do back in the days, following these frameworks. And I'll explain to you in a second, but feel free to engage here, chat with me. I want to make sure that you're following, okay? The one thing that I noticed, I was like, okay, there's a lot of frameworks. And then the more I was doing research on like newest frameworks, I was like, there's way more now. Like people are building frameworks for everything. It's just crazy. I think ChatGPT is helping people build frameworks. And then I was like, okay, what's common between them? What's the one thing that they all have in common? They have three things that are probably very popular amongst all of them. And I think they resonate to all of us here, but feel free to disagree. One is purpose. Every community framework talks about having a clear goal, a clear objective, a clear purpose. Totally fair, totally fair. The second thing that's very common amongst them, again, the wording is different across, but it's essentially participation, having activity, having contributions, having engagement. That tends to be the terminology that's being used as a common aspect. And the third one is about the value creation. And like it's the content that you create, it's the support that you give, it's the feedback, it's the thought leadership. So value creation comes in, again, several different ways in different terminology, and they kind of make sense, right? It's all fair. Do you agree? Like, does it make sense? Does that feel like it is a good summary of all the frameworks we have seen? Kind of feel it works? But what's then community as a service that's not outsourcing community managers? Well, that, in my perspective, is building this plural platform agnostic approach to leveraging communities, not to building communities. And then you'd be like, okay, hold on. So we're talking like you're a community builder. We're all community builders here. What are you talking about? You're like talking about leveraging, but not building. What's different? What's different? So I'll share, again, my perspectives, what a community as a service is. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to deep dive. I'll show you examples and then give you like some takeaways from there. Okay? Are you good? And then, by the way, Francisco, you tell me when I'm good to leave, because I want to make sure I have time for questions from people if they have questions. So the first thing of the community as a service that's different is that it's not a single purpose. That's very different. I'll explain in more details later. I'll show you examples, but it's about multiple identities. It's about multiple interests, and more than everything, a higher purpose. And higher purpose will resonate with, I think, a lot of you. It did resonate a lot with me in the last year plus. Multispatial, what does that mean? It's enough. Some people have been calling this like communities everywhere. I think Rich uses this term a lot. It's more than that. It's about being agnostic to platforms. It's about being on and offline. It's about being in multiple spaces. And I'll share something that's much more special about this in a second. And third, it's about experiences. And experiences means it's memorable. It has high intensity. So high intensity may mean a lot of things to you all. So I'll take this with a pinch of salt. But to me, it may mean like you can get like goosebumps. It gets like that, butterfly in the stomach. Maybe builds serendipity. Maybe it's about, something that you always be talking about for a long time. So experiences can be a lot of different things. And again, sharing this with you in a second. But the most important thing, that's the main difference between a regular community framework and a community as a service framework, is that the community is not yours. That's the most important. When we talk about community everywhere, we're still talking about you owning the spaces. It's your social media, it's your page, it's your forum, it's your event. I'm talking about not owning any of this. It's not owning community. You're just leveraging communities. And that's the difference. That's the key difference. Now, let's dive into this and I'll explain my rationale behind this. Just want to make sure that you're still with me because I know it's early. At least it's early for me. I don't. But Piper is probably like 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. It's just cool. I think for Chris as well. They're all chill. They had their coffee, but I didn't yet. So my rationale behind this is when we talk about spaces, we usually want to find spaces where your ICP is part of, right? Like your target audience. ICP is essentially like your ideal customer profile. In communities, I usually say ICCP, which is your ideal community customer profile. So the consumer of that community, where they hang. There's a second point, which is around intent. And when I say intent, when I said like higher purpose, I'll share with you in a second. But usually what that means is you may have a community where people have a very specific goal. And this has been known for a long time. So maybe an example was when I was working for Dropbox. The goal of the community members there was to get to answers quickly. They wanted to learn how to integrate Dropbox or how to share feedback or to get their teams getting the most out of Dropbox so they could justify the investment they were making in paying Dropbox for business. That was very clear. Well, they were like very specific intents. When I talk about higher purpose or bigger intent, it's usually more than that specific goal that you have. It's maybe beyond that. And you will see a lot of brands that do that really well. So, I mean, if I talk about the brands here that are very known, it's going to be probably like unfair, but I'll have to share them anyways. So we talk about, for example, Nike. When we talk about, the purpose of the brand is beyond the shoes. It's beyond like having questions answered in a community. If we talk about Apple, same thing. Everyone knows about all of that. But how does that make sense for smaller teams or smaller products, smaller communities? How do you make that mean more than just like a single purpose, being like multi-purpose? Because we're like multi-identities here. I think all of us have like a lot of things in common here. Maybe we are like all community managers, but then behind that, we all want to make money out of this because, we have to pay our bills. But behind all of that, maybe all of us want to provide to our families. And maybe there's a higher purpose behind all of this. And that may be what connects us. And that's what probably will make this different from just a regular transactional community or a very product-driven community. So that's the one aspect. And then value. And when we talk about value, I'll share like a little bit about that in examples. But to me, it's again, when you give them like this extra mile, you go beyond what's expected. When you give them memorable experiences, when you give them something to continue to talk about for a long time, something they will be always, bragging about, or something that they'll be always remembering. Maybe they were like highly vulnerable about something. Maybe they did something that felt super special. But most of all, you never as a community manager ask for something in return. You just give. You're just serving them. You're just giving them, and you never ask for anything in return. That is so powerful. And again, I'm just excited about this because I've been doing this and I'm feeling like this is insane. This is so good. Why didn't I not do this before? So let's dive in. Okay? Because I think a lot of you like the frameworks. I'm not a framework guy, as I can say, but I have a framework. So why is this working for me? Again, let's now talk about the three main points here, okay? And then we can dive in questions, and then we can look at like a few other things. Distribution value, and then the tie to ROI. So TROI. This is not a common term I'm seeing in community. I actually learned the TROI term a lot working at Wix, because that's a very, very common thing that my former CMO used to push us, for. That was like the key goal there. So let's talk about each of them here. So distribution. So, okay, let me bring you some examples here about distribution, because I love this. Do you all know this brand? Do any of you know who owns this brand, or what is this, apart from just being like a chocolate brand? Anyone, any idea? And do you know who they compete with? Anyone wants to give a guess? Yeah. So that's Mr. Beast's chocolate brand. So I would imagine, did Mr. Beast even know how to make chocolates? Is this the main thing for him? I don't think it is, right? Why is he winning in the distribution of chocolate? Why is he winning there? Because he has a massive distribution, massive. But when I say massive, it's like bigger than Super Bowl. It's crazy. Each video from Mr. Beast, from Jimmy, gets at least 100 million views. At least. The number of views he gets by time, if you look at like not necessarily like per video, but per time, is higher than the Super Bowl. When you want to pay to be seen on Super Bowl, because Super Bowl is about distribution, right? Like brands pay several millions of dollars to be seen for maybe 20 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, and they pay high amounts of millions. And then you have this single dude, 24-year-old, who gets the same volume of distribution on YouTube. It's insane. It's insane. And he's not the only one. He's an example. You get like Prime from, Logan Paul. You get a lot of other brands that are very, very known. And this is not new, right? I mean, the creator economy, which is very, known now, has always existed. But back in the days, we called like the celebrity brands. So you may have a perfume from like a very known celebrity, like a Hollywood star. You may have this whiskey brand from from a Proper 12, for example, which is from Conor McGregor, an Irish beast. I don't know if he's any other thing than that. So again, you have brands that are created because they have what? Huge distribution. They're known. Everyone knows them. They have distribution. What do you think is the largest and most profitable pizza making company, the pizza brand in the world? It's Domino's. Do you think Domino's is the best pizza? It's not. Domino's is not the best pizza, but they have the largest distribution. Back in the days, do you know who used to own like the car distribution? So the car sales companies, like not the brands, but the offices, the spaces where you would buy the cars, they would own distribution because there was no option. So what would happen is the car manufacturers, they would go to these distributions and they'll essentially give them incentive. I'm not going to say this like as bribe because we're recording here, but just incentives. They're giving them incentives to put their newest car in front of the store so that people would look at that and be like, hey, this is the car I want. And they'll promote that because they own distribution. And then you fast forward to today, distribution is no longer with the sales spaces like the warehouses and whatnot. So distribution is online. Distribution is with the brand themselves. They have other ways of distributing. So the car sales companies, they don't own that space anymore. So it's up to the manufacturer to define, hey, you're going to promote this no matter what, because I own the distribution now. So it's a game changer when you own distribution. And this is amongst everything that you see. As I mentioned, like they're brands that are owned by celebrities and they're valued like gazillions of millions of dollars. Like they're massive. Rihanna's one is huge. It's huge. She actually paid to be at Super Bowl because she knew she would promote her brand there and that would increase value for her. So that's the level of how people think about it. Dr. Dre, he actually paid, I think, $7 million to be on Super Bowl. So distribution is huge, okay? Distribution is the key thing here. So if you own distribution, you own a lot. So that's the one thing. How to get to that? Very hard, right? Which is why brands pay to get distribution from people who have that. So why do you think Messi was hired to play at Inter Miami? If you don't know, but Inter Miami is a soccer, apparently in the US, but it's a football team. And Messi going there, or why would Cristiano Ronaldo play in Saudi Arabia? Why is Taylor Swift being sponsored by Coke and all of that? Like Pepsi used to sponsor Michael Jackson back in the days. Now it's sponsoring Beyonce and all of that because they get the distribution. So brands want to associate themselves with people who have the high distribution and brings them the higher purpose. But that's something else that I'll share in a second. Okay. Then we move into value. What is value then? Value can be a lot of things, right? When people say, and usually in frameworks, they say value is like, hey, you're being a thought leader. You're, engaging people. You are, It's just like the words are very vague. It's hard to know exactly what value means. So share like very tangible examples, and then feel free to disagree, but I hope this makes sense to you. So we host a lot of dinners. I host a lot of dinners with Persona. But before hosting a lot of dinners with Persona, I started to join a lot of dinners here in the Bay Area. And it's very common here to have dinners that you don't know anyone. It's like a potluck format where you bring some food and then you just meet with a ton of people. But this group of people who are created, so they are not necessarily a random people that you're like, hey, come in. They find someone who might be interesting, someone who may have something to add, someone who has done something memorable, and they're like, hey, come to the dinner. Come with us. Just bring some food and we'll meet. And I did that so many times. And there's one common thing you'll notice. I don't know if you noticed this from the picture here. I mean, obviously, this is not a picture I took. This is from the web. So forgive me, stock footage, whoever took the picture. But this is just for example. But what's common here? What's the one thing that you notice about how the meal is served here? I want to share this because I think this is very important. So the detail, it's what makes the difference. There's one thing here. You'll notice that in the potluck, if you don't know, because I didn't know, about potlucks before. Potlucks when you bring some food that you share, and all the meals here, they're shared. They're not like single meals. Like you don't have like your own like plate or dish that's associated to you alone. You're essentially sharing that. All the food there is for everyone. Is about sharing the food as well. Usually, food is associated with like good times. People like they love to feast. I mean, kings used to feast. You have like the first like the Last Supper, essentially like from the biblical times to kings to today. Meals are when people like mingle, they get together. Meals are great times where you can connect to people, like they tend to. And when we share the food, it's even more special because that makes it like about community building. It makes about like each other, so you're not no longer like just eating your thing and then you're like, hey, this is mine, and if I left something here, it's fine because it's mine. No, it's about everyone. So if there's like I don't know six I don't know, there's like 6 pieces of cake there, and then there's 8 people, you'll find a way that everyone gets a little bit of that cake. You share that one slice in 2, and then everyone gets a little bit of that. So there's all of this, which is very, very special about meal sharing. There are things that makes you vulnerable, right? Experiences that will make you suffer a little bit, be super vulnerable, maybe challenge yourself and have to do it as a team, do that as a group. These are also very good value. And then when we talk about higher purpose, maybe there's something where you open up so much. Again, this is an example that I do with friends. We go for like, Bible studies and prayer groups. And that's so special because if there's one thing that I tell you that makes, one thing that will make friendship stronger, and that's like scientific, right? There's one thing that you make friendships stronger. It's either by time. So there's just so much you can do about time, right? You have to wait. Time takes time. But there's another one, which is intensity. The higher the intensity, the higher the connection, the higher that you mingle, the faster you get to that point where you're like, now I have this connection. So usually if say like you go through like an accident together, or you go, I don't know, to a situation that's super tough together, or that's highly vulnerable. So these are the groups that bond really well. So if you had like treatments, or if you had to go through situations that were really harsh, tough times, they're usually like strong, to connect with you. So that's another point that I mentioned about the value here. And that brings me to the last point, which is the TROI. Did any of you use this term before? I'll be very honest. Like I've been using this for like 3 years or so. Very new to me. But the time to ROI is slightly different to ROI because that associates a lot with the effort that you make for community building, because that takes time, right? It's not like a simple thing to do. So TROI, I'll give you like a couple of examples. This is Fiverr. Fiverr reports their results, and then it may be too small, so I'll probably like be very brief on this one and share the other ones. But when Fiverr shares their results, you can look at like the 2 axes here. Like you have the axis that represents the subscriptions, and then you have the Y representing the return on the investment, and then you have the first dot there from the bottom that says essentially like what's the value. It's cohort based, right? It's not like essentially your entire user base. It's cohort based, so you measure by cohorts. So it's representing like cumulative TROI value over quarters. So this is measured each quarter, as usually companies do. So if you look at the first observation here, you can see is between Q2 2020 and Q4 2021, it took an average per cohort 3 months to get the return on the investment they made. And then you look at the Q1 2022 to Q1 2023, there was a slight decrease. So it took longer to get the return. And then Q2 2021, it took a longer time, because like essentially how long is it taking by the cohorts that you have to return on the investments that you're making. I'll show you some more specific examples. So that's the one from Wix, actually. This is public information. I'm not sharing anything confidential. If you go to Wix investments reports, they showed that. So you can download that. You can download the whole presentation. But that's, again, looking at how long it takes, from the investment made to get the return based on your investment that you made. So if you have like, I don't know, premium subscriptions, if you have people who are paying for a service, maybe people who are converting somehow, you look at that investment, how long that take for that cohort to go back into the investment that you made initially. And you always do that cohorts because the investment is ongoing, right? You're not going to stop the investment and then wait. You actually continue to invest, which is why you need to look at like which cohort did I touch with that first investment and how long does that take to get the return. That applies to a lot of things, right? And that's a very interesting one, actually, because that applies to us a lot. And the reason I'm sharing this with you all is that the more we know how to associate the effort we make with business goals, the better placed you are as a community manager, because that's what matters at the end of the day. We're talking about business here. We're not talking about charity. So you need to show the money, or you need to show the savings. You need to show some results. So this is an example from G2. G2 is this review platform. They have shared the TROI for perceived pricing in one of the reports they shared. So how long does it take for someone to perceive that what they paid for was worth it? Very interesting, right? Because it's perception. When we talk about perception, we may have an influence as community managers. So how can you influence? I want to get from you all here, because I know you're all, I hope you're paying attention to me. I hope. But how do you know, or how do you probably influence the perceived pricing someone paid for a product that you offer? How can you maybe influence? Obviously, the goal is to reduce the perceived pricing, right? So you want to make sure that they feel the return to what they paid for is lower. So the faster it is that for them to perceive that what they paid was worth it, the better. How can you, as a community manager, influence that? Any ideas? And I'll drink like some water while you give me some answer. And thanks if you're participating. I know there's a slight delay, so I may get the answers by the time I'm actually giving the answer. So some examples may include if you share like a use case. So maybe there's a customer story that you can share. Maybe you can talk about that story. Maybe you can facilitate the onboarding. So the faster they learn, the faster the more you reduce the learning curve. So the faster you make them learn and onboard and start using your product, the better. And onboarding can be done through community. We actually do 100% of our onboarding through community with Persona. That's an example. You can reward your top contributors, right? You can like, hey, if you know this better, like if you're one that I identified as someone who has perceived value faster, can you help me do that for others? Can you work with this group? And then maybe you can call them advocates. You can call them super users, top contributors, whatever it is. So you can always think about that, right? So TROI can apply as well to perceived value, perceived pricing. A lot of things that are sometimes you think like you have no influence. I think community has a lot of influence on that. So as a summary, like thinking about like TROI from the perspective of a community manager, I could try to put this in words, so forgive me if it doesn't make sense, but I hope it does. So it's the time it takes to generate the value by creating intense, memorable experiences that quickly deepen the member engagement across multiple spaces, accelerating the return on community investment. Okay, in other words, that means that the faster the work you make a community that has high intensity, high distribution, the more you improve your TROI, the time to your return of investment. And by doing that, the more the company will see the value, the more the company will want to invest in that, right? So let's go back to what I said. Plural, multispatial, and experiences. So we have distribution. And again, you can't start a community with distribution. There's no way. Like you're gonna start a community, you're like, hey, I'm gonna, I don't know, open this Instagram account or open this forum. I'm gonna start like an event, and you're like, there's no one here. It's zero. I mean, where's people, right? You usually start with zero, which is very hard. But if you use the leverage communities, you can always look at like, where are they hanging out? What's the higher purpose? And then you go into multispatial, again, online, offline, join events, and then you start doing your own. You start giving a lot of value back, and don't ask for anything in return, because people just connect with you back, because they're like, hey, this human brings me a lot of memorable experiences. This human brings a lot of intensity. I want to do more of that. I want that intensity. I want to be vulnerable. I want to be open. I want to share that my multiple hats that I wear make sense. Because again, think about this, like at least for me, I'm an expat living in the US, but I also happen to work with community. So I'm not a community manager of a community. I'm not joining a community for the sake of community, but maybe there's something bigger than that. Maybe there's a reason why I moved abroad. Maybe there's a higher purpose, and that's what makes sense. That's what makes people connect on a higher level. So then once you do that, you have then your high intensity memorable experiences. As you bring that to them, and you start to make that circle, that framework. I hope it's a framework. I'm building a framework. Makes sense. But I'm gonna pause because I'm talking a lot. If you want to chat to me about that, yes, you can talk to me about that. But I want to, for now, pause. Thank you all, and open up for questions, because I've seen some questions come up. Oh, you're mute, Mr. Francisco.
Yes, I'm here. I'm back. Let me fix this. I'm thinking that the layout is broken. 1 second.
No, go for it.
Yeah, this way is better. Cool. Ed, that was great. I saw the chat on fire. Lots of questions regarding TROI. I have featured a few comments so we can go through. Then
Let's do
also
it.
this one with the CSAT plus ROI was interesting from Meg. So yeah, that was um, interesting. I would say it's a special approach, what you have shared today, because it's very business focused. I would say that probably is the even like last week, I have shared a newsletter on my daily community newsletter, all about
Mhm.
how we should approach as community managers all this stuff about personal branding. No, so also that newsletter was focused on just like focus on the business goals rather than hey, I'm the best building relationships, I'm the best building connections. Yeah, companies
Yeah.
love that, but it's not the important bit, sadly, even though it's the best for us. But the same. So your talk today was all about that, and people love it. So let me bring to the table a few questions. So this one is first. It's more like a probably clarification, no? So
Yeah.
Jose says, I know just ROI, but TROI is new for me. Is there any connection? Probably we want to expand on this bit because probably that was the hot stuff today. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Meg gave a really good answer there. In summary, it's essentially you're adding like a new layer, which is the time to get that return. What we see a lot, especially if you go into like, I don't know, paid ads or you go like to marketing campaigns, you're like, hey, I'm going to put $100 into this. I'm expecting to get 110. Or if I'm going to an event, a conference, usually put that money at the conference and then you expect the return within like 2 months. I want to see this return or like number of bookings, number of leads generated. Very, very transactional, very specific to that time. When we talk about community, it's so hard because if you're building community properly, you're not seeing immediate returns. So you need to consider that, hey, I'm touching these people today that maybe in 6 months, in 8 months, in 10 months, I'll see some sort of return. Maybe and the return may be different, right? It may be that they become advocates for you, and then you have to measure that. Maybe they'll become referrals. Maybe they'll give you distribution, which is what I mentioned. Maybe they'll give you the spaces. Maybe they'll give something else. So you need to look at, okay, what's my goal here, and how long does it take me to get to that return from that cohort that I'm touching today. So that's the TROI. It's slightly changed from a regular ROI, which is more immediate, or ROE as well, right? When you have like investments in ads and campaigns.
Yeah, that brings to me a question. For instance, when you are planning, let's say imagine you are planning 2025, and then a few goals are yearly goals, no? So we should
Yeah.
kind of always try to create small milestones so we are able to actually add a TROI kind of
Yes.
qualifier to these goals. What is your advice on that? Because we plan for the year, nice programs, but like we need to kind of show the value from the beginning, no? So what
Yeah.
is your advice on that?
That's a good question. I'll share an example that maybe you can apply to, I don't know about ADP list because it's free for consumers, but say Bettermode. If Bettermode wants to measure TROI on their community investment, so you know how much it costs for your subscription. I would assume you pay per month, or maybe there's an annual plan. I'll make it easy. So let's say you pay $1,000 per year to have a Bettermode instance. Like maybe it's the cheapest plan. I don't know. And you're gonna start making investments there, right? So you want to make sure that as you're investing, either like distribution. So distribution is probably the easiest to explain. Say you work with Francisco because Francisco has this massive community. People love him. So you feel like, hey, I'm going to invest on Francisco. I'm going to pay him a salary. I'll give him commission, and I'll give him X, Y, and Z. And then it's going to make like 7x what it costs for me to have one single customer. But if Francisco can not only bring me customers, but retain my customers. So I have like a lifetime value for a customer, right? LTV. So you probably know your LTV. If you don't, like your CEO knows the LTV for Bettermode. So like, hey, on average, they stay 3 years. But since Francisco joined, he's bringing so much value that people stay like 5 years now. So I'm almost double the number of years that people stay. So my LTV increases by 2 years. So that's an extra 2,000 per member per year that you have. So that's an increase that you have on your essentially return. So if you're investing per year, you're like, okay, how much more do I want to increase this cohort from the time I'm touching them to like the end of this year? How much more time will they stay with us? Or how much more do they use our features? How much more will they be engaged with us? And that's then translating into maybe they're spending more money, they're like upgrading, and they're like staying longer with you. So that's usually like my planning. You look at like what do you need to touch, which metric, very, very associated to the business goal. So it has to be associated with the money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sounds great. There is a question going to the soft side. Or maybe
Yeah.
we can keep the conversation on this side first. Piper also asked a different question. Can you explain TROI again in a verbal thumbnail? I'm sorry, the graphs confuse me. Like
In a verbal
we kind of
thumbnail,
explain a bit probably for Piper, but yeah. Anything else to add? Final bit on the TROI. Yeah.
I think so, Piper. I think that the way I would think about this is if you're creating campaigns or if you think about your community strategy, uh, you have to always associate that with a business goal, right? That's the main thing. And if your business goal is a dollar sign, which I recommend it is, it can be like maybe cost savings, it can be maybe increasing revenue, maybe it can be increasing LTV, whatever it is. You want to make sure that as you're doing your activities, you're looking at what return you're getting over time. So may take like 8 months, it may take a year. But once you know that you can start doing that every time because you know that in 10 months or in 1 year, you're going to start to see that return. It may not be as fast or immediate because you're doing like more, I'll call like they're not so transactional things, but you're going to get like that result. But it will take time. You need to start measuring this. You need to look at the cohorts you're touching and what do you want to get out of them? And then look at them over time, measure them over time. And you essentially get your TROI at some point.
Yeah, agree with that. Then going to the other side, to the soft side, Ricardo asked, how would you communicate that memorable sorry, how would you communicate that memorable experiences are creating
That's
business
great.
impact?
Yeah, fantastic. Great question, Ricardo. So again, think about the example of the fact that you want to leverage communities. You're not building your community, right? So if I go, I'll try and like make this example very, very clear to us today, but let's make this hypothetical, okay? So Francisco has this massive, beautiful community that he's building with Led by, and then I'm here today, right? So I'm borrowing his audience because he has the audience. I'm just here bringing content, bringing hopefully a memorable experience. Let's say that I drive like such a good experience here that people will be like, hey, I want to keep seeing what Ed has to do. No matter if he's with Francisco today, maybe tomorrow he's talking at a different community, and then the next day he's at a different experience, and then the other one he's at maybe a CMX, whatever. I don't need to be in a specific space because people are following Ed. They're not following the community. Does it make sense? So if you create a memorable experience, they'll follow you. They'll follow what you're creating. So that's when you look at business impact, because they're like, hey, obviously in this case that I'm sharing the example here, I'm just talking about community things. But if I'm talking about things that will relate to my business with Persona, whatever,
Software.
people will be like, hey, I want to see what this guy is working for Persona. Very clear example. Elon Musk, may hate it or may love him. Elon Musk is beyond the brands that he creates. No one is following him because of X or because of SpaceX or because of Tesla. It's because of all of them both. Because whatever he does, you're like, I'm interested in what this guy's doing. So he is driving business impact, but the fact that he is what he is, that's crazy, isn't it? So he is the brand himself. So that's when you'll start to look at the business impact by the memorable experiences. And that can be your output, what you generate for that community, what you create, that's odd, or that's different, that's unique, that's super high value, that has a higher purpose. And it goes back to the points that I was mentioning before.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think that we are kind of good with questions. Jose Betro is a brother, use another company. I think that we are good with that. Yes, so let me bring this to stage. I'm not seeing other questions right now. So yeah, I think we are good. There you go. So first, thank you everyone for the questions today. I think that for those that are part of Led by community on Slack, you can just like now reply on the thread if you have any additional questions. The replay will be placed on the same space that we are seeing this right now, so you can go back and see and review as many times as you want. I'll try to negotiate with Ed if he wants to share the slide with us, so we can see all these cool graphs by ourselves. But yeah, I just wanted to show appreciation. I think that I have one more announcement. That is the upcoming event in November. It's actually this is the wrong image. Sorry for that. It's happening on Wednesday. It's happening on Wednesday, the 6th, because Tuesday 5th is actually elections day. But don't get me wrong. If you are SVP, you'll get the right reminders, because this is the wrong image. It's happening on Wednesday, the 6th, with Ana Maria Dorgo. She's a learning and community builder expert, and she will bring lots of valuable stuff, just as Ed just did for us. I wanted to give a shout on that, and of course, says everyone, thank you for being with us today. We have available already in our website up to March, all events listed right below this stream, so you can just go down, explore what they are about, and RSVP. Ed, if you have any, I would say, no, after this topic is done, but do you have any encouraging words for those that are right now job hunting as community managers? That I wanted to like show some love today because I have seen more and more. Any kind words
Yeah,
for them?
I do actually, because this came up. I was talking to someone a week ago about like creating like this roles of community, and I think a lot of times what happens is people expect the roles to be so defined that they know exactly what to do, what to deliver, and they're like, oh, this is exactly what community should be. And often what happens is they see the roles and they're like, oh, this is a social media community. This is not community manager, or this is a marketing manager. Oh no, it's so upsetting. And really, like, what I have to tell you is that I don't think there's been a single role I worked as a community manager, like head of community, that they had a definition of what that was. They literally, and this literally is words from my CEO at the company that I'm working for. They're like, I don't know what this thing is. I don't even know if this is going to work, but I'm hiring you. That's it. And Dropbox, same thing. They're like, hey, we're dealing with a lot of ambiguity. It was just growing a lot, and we just need this thing. I think we need community. I'm not sure, but we need a thing, community. And that was it. That was my scope. Figure it out. So don't be scared to accept the challenge and figure it out and make it yourself. Make the case once you're in. Don't wait for them to define it for you, because otherwise you're not going to be the community manager. It's going to be the doer. You're not going to be the strategist. So think about like give me the opportunity, and boom, I'll go get it. So I'd say this is the encouragement, if I can share. Don't be so tied into like waiting for people to define the role for you. Just go for it, grab it, and make it happen. You start to show the results, they'll be like, hey, let's give him more of that because he's delivering it. So go for it.
Yeah, thank you for that. Exciting, exciting. Oh, so again, before we wrap up, thank you everyone for the attention today. Check what is next, and yeah, Ed, thank you, man. Take care, and
Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to wrap up now. See you, bye,
Thanks, man.
everyone.
Thanks again. Bye,
Woo!
all.